Hello everyone, I'm the Masked Analyst. I've just heard that a very important video has been DMCA'd. This DMCA incident is more important than your average DMCA takedown because it illustrates how the DMCA can stifle the ability to disseminate important news. And this DMCA is particularly ironic because the organization that followed it is one of the most important news disseminators in the world. I'm going to post a link in the sidebar to a copy of the video that was taken down. The video is no longer available on the channel in which it was originally posted, but it's been mirrored by others so you can see for it yourself. You can see it for yourself now. Watch this video now, please. Okay, for those of you who haven't watched it, I'm going to sum it up very quickly. A reporter for CNN was covering a tax protesting Tea Party in Chicago. The reporter got into a confrontation with some of the protesters and was very unprofessional. To say that she was unprofessional is an understatement. It's one of the worst pieces of reporting that I've ever seen done by a major news organization. Well, someone from a political blog called the Founding Bloggers posted the clip of this debacle on YouTube in order to show what unbalanced and shouting reporting took place on CNN. Now, CNN didn't like this so much, so they sent in a DMCA and had it removed. This is shameful. As I've mentioned elsewhere, I'm not a lawyer, but Ben Scheffner is a copyright attorney who specializes in this sort of thing, and he thinks that this is fair use. I agree with him, and I'll post a link to his blog in the sidebar so you can look at his analysis for yourself. Now, if anyone from the Founding Bloggers is watching this, I think you have a very important story on your hands. Actually, you have three very important stories on your hands. First, you have the story of an individual reporter who was letting her personal bias get in the way of good reporting. And second, you have the story of one of the world's most important news organizations trying to suppress news through the improper use of the DMCA. But this is just one incident, and if you focus too hard on it, then you'll miss the bigger picture. And that is how the DMCA has been turned into a weapon to suppress free speech on the Internet. No site is immune from having legitimate speech removed through the improper use of the DMCA, but any speech that occurs on YouTube is particularly vulnerable. That is because the DMCA is a bad law, and YouTube is overzealous in the way they enforce the DMCA. They suspend accounts unnecessarily, and when you are suspended from YouTube, you are permanently suspended from the world's largest town hall for political speech. I'd say about 80% of the problem is due to a poorly written law, which is, in my opinion, unconstitutional. And the other 20% of the problem lies in the way that YouTube enforces this law. I've made many videos on this topic, and I have a website that covers it as well. I'm not going to go into this in great detail, but I invite you to go to the sidebar and click on the link to my website, or to view the videos in my DMCA playlist if you want to learn more about it. Or better yet, type in the words DMCA abuse into YouTube's video search engine. You will see lots of evidence of the DMCA being used as a weapon to censor people on YouTube. So while CNN's shoddy reporting and their apparent cover-up of the incompetent reporter is big news, I hope that you, the Founding Bloggers, will do a thorough investigation into the DMCA and how it is used to suppress free speech on the Internet. That is the biggest story by far. Now, my critics might raise two objections to my claim that the DMCA and its misuse is the bigger story. First, they might say, hey Masked Analyst, this isn't such a big deal because the Founding Bloggers can always get their video reposted by sending in a DMCA counter notice. This objection contains two fallacies. The DMCA requires you to sign your name and address to the counter notice to get your video restored, and then it requires YouTube to turn that counter notice over to the person who sent in the DMCA. That means that if you want to remain anonymous and fight for your right to make fair use of other people's materials, you're shit out of luck. You have to choose between giving up your anonymity, signing a false name to a DMCA and committing perjury, or giving up. Now, this may not be an obstacle to the people at the Founding Bloggers because their names are out in the open. But it might be a problem if it happened to someone like, say, Allah Pundit from the Hot Air site. Incidentally, This requirement makes the DMCA unconstitutional in my opinion. A number of important cases point to the fact that we have a right to speak anonymously on the Internet. And might I point out that our founding fathers valued the right to speak anonymously. After all, the Federalist Papers were published anonymously under the name Publius. There's one more problem with this first objection, and that is timeliness. Even if the founding bloggers filed a counter notice, YouTube must allow 10 business days to pass before restoring the video if it wants to enjoy the protection from a copyright infringement lawsuit that the DMCA offers. It must wait 10 business days. Now this has an adverse impact on time-urgent stories such as this one. I might also note that one or two videos put out by the McCain campaign was DMCA just a few weeks before the election. To have to wait 10 business days to have your video restored just before an election is the same thing as having to wait for eternity. Now this brings us to the second objection that critics might have of my claim that the DMCA abuse is the bigger story here. Now some will undoubtedly point to the fact that several people have reposted the founding bloggers' video after it was DMCA'd, and that this story is now more widely known than it would have been had CNN not tried to cover it up. Now this is true, and it's called the Streisand effect. And we've seen this Streisand effect at work many times before on YouTube. A ton of people reposted Antiboo 86's video mocking Onision after Onision had it removed through a DMCA copyright. And Amazing Muslim's video was reposted on many channels after Naomi Knight DMCA'd it. And let's not forget perhaps the most famous of all, the Tom Cruise video that Scientologists wanted to suppress. It is now found easily on YouTube and elsewhere on the Internet. Now there are other examples as well, but the most important example may be the Diebold case. Now this isn't primarily a YouTube incident. This Diebold case that I'm referring to happened before there was YouTube, but it's probably the most important incident. Diebold used to be one of the biggest manufacturers of electronic voting machines. This may be a bit hard to believe, but some knucklehead at Diebold posted the source code for their voting machines on the Internet, where it was freely available to anyone who stumbled across their website. Now, Bev Harris was doing research on electronic voting, and she discovered their page, and she brought it to the attention of a computer scientist at Johns Hopkins University named Avi Rubin. Rubin analyzed the code and wrote a report detailing hundreds of security flaws that he found in it. Some of the flaws were very serious and could have been used to rig an election. Unfortunately for Rubin, though, he was on the board of directors of Vote Here Incorporated, and he had stock in that company as well. And Vote Here was a competitor of Diebold's in the voting machine market. So Diebold responded to Rubin's analysis by accusing him of having a conflict of interest and denying that their machines were so flawed that they could jeopardize elections. The conflict between Diebold and Rubin played out in the newspapers, but the average voter who was aware of this conflict probably didn't even know who to believe. However, a cache of about 13,000 Diebold internal documents and emails were leaked onto the Internet. These documents reveal that the people at Diebold damn well knew that there was a problem with their voting machines. Some newspapers reported on this, and Diebold fought back by trying to scrub the Internet of the incriminating evidence by sending out DMCA after DMCA. And they were successful at getting a number of ISPs to remove the documents. But fortunately, Bev Harris and some heroic students at Swarthmore College fought back. The digital resistance movement started off with just a few people, but it eventually grew so large that it overwhelmed Diebold's ability to purge the Internet of this damning evidence against them. Eventually, the Electronic Frontier Foundation stepped in and aided the Swarthmore students by filing a lawsuit against Diebold for abusing the DMCA. The court ended up finding Diebold $125,000 for using copyright law to suppress legitimate free speech. I'll post a link in the sidebar to my website where I discuss this incident in more detail. So the Diebold story is an example of how the Streisand effect worked to defeat DMCA abuse. But I want you to ask yourself, was this result inevitable? If the circumstances had been a little bit different, might Diebold have been able to successfully get away with removing damning evidence from the internet? Remember, the resistance movement started out with just Bev Harris and 2 or 3 Swarthmore students. Suppose those students had been too busy with their papers or finals to get involved. Or suppose they were intimidated by the risks of getting involved. And make no mistake about it, those who posted the memos certainly were sticking their necks out on the line and risked being sued. Might the story not have received all the attention it deserved had it not been for a few brave individuals? Now, let's turn to the CNN video that was just DMCA'd. The founding bloggers run a relatively successful and well-known blog. They had the platform necessary to publicize their story when their video was pulled, and the story was picked up by some other well-known bloggers. And their story drew the attention of some other YouTubers who decided to risk their accounts by reposting the video. But I want you to use your imagination. Suppose the video had been posted by someone who was really obscure. Suppose this video was posted by someone who didn't have a blog and who had only, say, 10 subscribers on YouTube. There's a good chance that almost no one would have seen the story to begin with. They wouldn't have seen the video to begin with at all. But suppose somehow that CNN got wind of the story and they sent a DMCA to YouTube to get it removed. The chances are very good that the story would have died right there. Maybe another YouTuber might have mirrored the video, but if the person who posted it originally had only a few subscribers, then it's likely that the video would not have been seen by anyone who was willing to risk their account by reposting it. So this is a flaw in the argument that we can rely on the Streisand effect to overcome DMCA abuse. We can all recall instances where the Streisand effect blew up in the face of those who tried to stamp out free speech. But it is presumptuous to assume that the Streisand effect always works. We hear about those situations when it works, but if there were instances when it failed, we just don't hear about them. How many stories have been successfully buried through DMCA abuse? How many stories should we have heard about but were denied the opportunity because they were buried? We will never know. So I urge the founding bloggers and the rest of the blogosphere to investigate how the DMCA is being used to suppress free speech. And I urge you to press for DMCA reform. It's a bad law, and the way YouTube enforces this law makes it even worse than it has to be. You should start your research by gaining an understanding of the purpose of copyright law. The reason for copyright law's existence is not to give creators control over their works or the right to profit from their works. Copyright law does do both these things, but it does so only as a means to a greater ends. The real purpose of copyright law is to foster an environment where new works will be created. One way of doing that is by giving creators the right to profit through limited control of their works. And the other way of fostering creativity is to allow creators to build on the works of others. This is accomplished through fair use. However, there are enemies of fair use. Powerful enemies who refuse to recognize that fair use is a right. I bring you the Copyright Alliance. They deny that there is a right to fair use, and their members include some of the biggest, most powerful corporations in the world. If you doubt that they are enemies of fair use, then just look at their FAQ on fair use. I'll post a link in the sidebar, and I want you to scroll down to the section entitled, Is Fair Use a Right? They come up with some bullshit examples to prove that fair use isn't a right. For example, the Copyright Alliance proves that fair use isn't a right by saying that no one has a right to publish your private correspondence. This is bogus reasoning. It assumes that publishing private correspondence is automatically covered by fair use. It then proceeds to prove that fair use is not a right by showing that this type of fair use should not be allowed. But publishing private correspondence might not necessarily fall under fair use. If I have private correspondence with someone, and that correspondence doesn't concern anybody else, and if neither I nor the person I'm corresponding with is a public person, and my correspondence can't be used to show that I'm a lying boot weasel about something that's of public interest, then publishing it would certainly not fall under fair use. To call this use fair use and then use it as a basis for proving that fair use is not a right is setting up a straw man. It is an intellectual swindling, a slimy sophistry cunningly crafted to confuse the clueless. They also say that no one has the right to break into your house to steal a private photograph in order to make fair use of it. Well, duh. There's a law against breaking and entering. But if the FBI enters a house with a search warrant and discovers a photograph of someone standing over a dead body with a knife dripping with blood, are you going to tell me that they have no right to publish this photograph? Are you going to tell me that the FBI must ask permission before they publish it? Bullshit. They may not want to publish it because it would taint a jury pool, but they certainly have the right to publish it. And they might publish it, especially if a truther cult developed after the killer was convicted that insisted that the killer was being framed and it was really George Bush that committed the murder. I know, that's a rather bizarre truther cult. But stranger ones have arisen. Now, I'm discussing the Copyright Alliance for two reasons. First, I maintain that we need to fight for DMCA reform, and that the Copyright Alliance will probably fight any meaningful reform every step of the way. It's important to know your adversary. And second, I want you to take a look at who is on the board of directors of the Copyright Alliance. Do you notice Time Warner on there? And what company does Time Warner own? Why, the Turner Broadcasting System. And who does the Turner Broadcasting System own? Ding, 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 ding. You've got it. They own the CNN company. They own CNN. And that's the company that sent in the DMCA to apparently hide the fact that they have a third-rate reporter on their crew. I want to conclude my remarks by stating that the Copyright Alliance is flat out wrong when they say that there is no right to fair use. They are correct in pointing out that fair use is an affirmative defense. That is, the only way you can meaningfully assert your right to fair use is to do so through court, as a defense in court. And this may cost tens or hundreds of thousands of dollars in legal fees. That, in my opinion, is a flaw in the legal system in the way it works. But that's how the law works. What can I say? But despite this fact, fair use is still a right. Section 107 of the copyright law clearly states that fair use of a copyrighted work is not an infringement of copyright. And Section 108F4 of copyright law states, nothing in this section in any way affects the right of fair use as provided by Section 107. Let me say that again. Nothing in this section in any way affects the right of fair use as provided by Section 107. Notice they didn't refer to it as the aardvark of fair use, or the kumquat of fair use, or even the affirmative defense of fair use. Congress called it the right of fair use. And that is something that I'm hoping you are able to get through the thick heads of those at CNN who sent in the DMCA and their allies on the Copyright Alliance. Well, this has been the Mass Analyst, under and in.